Discovered, 15 sinister true stories of haunted encounters that followed home after one message. The night Sarah received the text, shadows danced in the corners of her vision, and an unshakable dread crept into her bones. "I see you." The words haunted her, clutching at her heart like an icy grip. Alone in the din of the diner, the laughter around her felt distant. She dismissed it as a prank, but that flicker of fear danced just below the surface. As she returned home, the air felt thick, almost suffocating. Each creak of the floorboards echoed louder than before, but there were her children, Molly and Jake, sleeping soundly. A moment of relief washed over her. Yet the quiet that enveloped the house felt too deep, too suffocating. What had once been a comforting sanctuary turned sinister. Just after midnight, as she drifted into an anxious slumber, a child's laughter echoed through the halls. Molly's dolls had started moving on their own. It was subtle at first. One faced left instead of right, another looked slightly ajar. Fatigue distorted her common sense, spiraling into paranoia. She could feel eyes watching her, lurking just out of her sight. Then, Jake's innocent voice shattered the stillness. "Mommy, my new friend says hi." His wide eyes sparkled with a disturbing kind of joy, and Sarah's heart sank. Desperate for comfort, she turned to the neighbors. Maybe Larry or Mrs. Keller would understand. But when she shared her fears, they exchanged pitying glances and folded their arms tighter across their chests. "You must be overtired," Larry offered. His voice dripped with condescension, a thin veneer of concern concealing judgment. Mrs. Keller pushed cookies into her hands, a gesture meant to pacify rather than help. But Sarah sensed something deeper, something dark beneath their smiles. Long after the sun had set, she began scouring old records about Maplewood. Among the whispers of the elder residents, she found stories of the land etched with sorrow, haunted tales of spirits that lingered, waiting for the unsuspecting to awaken them. Every story spun her further into a web of hysteria. Paranoia twisted her thoughts into a grotesque spectacle, one where shadows lurked closer each night and her children fell deeper into a world unseen. How could a simple, picturesque suburb conceal such dark secrets? The townsfolk whispered, but to whom were they whispering? Tension rippled through the house during one stormy night, thunder striking a haunting rhythm. As she glanced at the clock, it was just after midnight. Suddenly, the children's laughter morphed into echoes of madness, horrific silliness that crawled beneath her skin. Cold sweat trickled down her spine as she sensed the heaviness in the air. Her heart raced like a wild animal caught in a trap. She had only one chance to escape this nightmare, but what if it wasn't the house that needed escaping? As the walls seemed to pulse around her, Sarah battled the lonely grip of isolation. The house shook, windows rattled, and a voice, as harsh as autumn wind, hissed, "Whose side are you on?" The moment was electrifying. Her heart pounded, desperation clawing at her throat. Could she confront the darkness before it devoured her family whole? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As shadows darted closer, gnawing at the edges of her sanity, Sarah faced a gut-wrenching reality. She had to choose to fight back against the encroaching darkness or surrender her children to a fate woven from the very fabric of her own fears, woven with lies the quaint suburb had inspired. Would she uncover the truth hiding in plain sight before it consumed everything she loved? The air crackled with tension, as though the storm had summoned something far worse than thunder. Sarah took a deep breath, heart hammering, adrenaline coursing through her veins. It felt impossible to keep her composure, yet she had no choice. She clutched the doorframe, feeling its rough wood against her palm, anchoring herself in an eerie reality that was rapidly unraveling. "Mommy? Can I tell you about my friend?" Jake's voice pierced the restless night, light and cheery, echoing through the oppressive darkness. It should have been innocent. Instead, it tightened a knot of dread in her stomach. "Not now, sweetheart," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper, fearing she might disturb whatever was listening. The laughter that had once been joyful twisted into something sharp, frayed at the edges. It wasn't just the children anymore. Something was looming, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be fed. The wind howled outside, rattling the window frames. She moved toward the living room, drawn by an unnatural pull. Each step felt heavy, almost as if the house beneath her were grasping at her, urging her to turn back. Yet, she could not. Something within her demanded revelation, even if it threatened to obliterate her sanity. Suddenly, she froze. The flickering light of the TV, static and forgotten, displayed a distorted image of her, warped and sinister. It was her, but the face twisted under shadows, eyes sunken, mouth stretched into a malicious smile. Instinct screamed at her to cover her child's eyes, but she stood doubled over, trapped within a surreal tableau of fear. "Turn it off!" she shouted, stumbling back, feeling as though she might collapse under the weight of everything, the glimmering truth hidden in Maplewood folklore, the distant laughter that tormented her nights, the sinister visions that drew stitches in her mind. "Mommy!" Molly cried from the dark hallway, her voice a jagged edge of panic that shattered Sarah's last threads of resolve. A loud crash erupted amid the storm. Something fell from a shelf, a doll, its porcelain face turned towards Sarah like a grotesque mask of death. It felt alive. A paralyzing chill slithered up her spine, and she lunged to grab Molly, pulling her close. "Jake!" she screamed, but the only response was silence, the hollow echo of her desperation rattling through the air. Terror swelled in her chest as she sprinted toward the closed door to the children's room, praying to find him safe. The door handle felt cold as ice beneath her trembling fingers. With a swift push, she entered only to find darkness and a shroud of silence. The bed was empty. Jake was gone. Heart racing, her mind flooded with thoughts of her neighbors' pitying looks, the whispers swirling like angry bees in her head. What had they known? Were they part of it too? The panic clawed at her as she turned, searching for any sign of her little boy, oblivious to the danger lurking just beyond the walls of their suburban nightmare. Suddenly, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, the screen illuminating a haunting message. "I see you, Sarah. Whose side are you on?" Her breath hitched. There it was, the all-consuming realization that whatever was hunting her was not just an abstract fear. It was real, and it was here, circling her like a vulture waiting for its feast. As she stood there, heart hammering in her ears, Jake's laughter rang out again, echoing unsettlingly from the darkness beneath the stairs. It was so joyful yet so wrong. With a final push of determination, Sarah knew she had to confront whatever had taken her son. But as she stepped toward the stairs, that same chilling voice slithered through the air. "Are you ready for the truth?" What truth awaited her in the bowels of her home? Would she reclaim her child, or would she become another tale woven into the fabric of Maplewood? The staircase loomed before her, dark and foreboding, each step a bridge to an unknown terror. The walls felt like they were closing in, shadows flickering in her peripheral vision. With every echo of Jake's laughter, dread knotted tighter in her chest, urging her to retreat. But retreat was not an option. She was his mother, and whatever had taken him would answer for this. The wooden steps creaked underfoot as she descended, the sound amplified by the oppressive silence. Each creak echoed like thunder in the stillness. She strained her ears for Jake's voice, her heart racing louder than the storm that roared outside. The laughter felt all around her, wrapping around her like tendrils of fog, luring her deeper into the abyss. "Jake!" she called, desperation bleeding into her voice. She could smell the dampness of the basement, a musty scent that clung to everything. The air thickened with an unseen weight, as if the darkness itself were alive, breathing, watching. Suddenly, a distinct noise jolted her, a child's giggle, soft and sweet, beckoning from the depths. It was so innocent, so wrong. It was the type of laughter that should belong to the living, but here, in this decaying catacomb, Sarah felt a shock of ice grip her spine. What if it wasn't Jake at all? What if it was something that wore his form, luring her in with the sweet veneer of childhood? She hesitated, knowing that each moment of indecision drew the invisible predator closer. She stretched her hand out toward the light switch but hesitating as a sudden flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure darted through the shadows, a fleeting silhouette that sent her heart racing and her instincts screaming to flee. But she was too far gone. She had to find Jake. "Mommy. Come play." The voice sounded just like him, but something about it tasted sour on her tongue. She stepped down another stair, the shadows wrapping around her like a shroud. Fumbling with the light switch, she pressed it down, but garnered nothing but a flicker before darkness swallowed her whole. Panic clawed at her throat. She cupped her hands around her mouth. "I'm coming, honey." Her voice quivered in the pitch black, each word dissipating as if swallowed by the house itself. She strained to see anything beyond the veil, to hear the familiar sound of her son. The basement lay heavy with dust, cluttered with remnants of a life once vibrant, now encased in a cocoon of dread. Fragments of broken toys glinted like tiny lost souls in the darkness, then she heard it, a soft whisper, rasping through the air, chilling her very core. Sarah was it her imagination? Her heart raced as she turned slowly, scanning the shadows with wide eyes. That whisper was teasing and dark, like a mocking twist of her name, veiled with a familiarity that sent her stomach churning. "Jake?" she called hesitantly. "Where are you?" Suddenly, a faint glow pulsed from the far end of the basement, like a lighthouse cutting through the night. She stumbled toward it, driven by the fragile hope that it was Jake. The shadows clung closer, creeping along her skin like icy fingers. As she neared, what she found sent a scream crashing through her throat. There in the faint light stood a figure, small, delicate. It was Jake, but his eyes were black, devoid of warmth, reflecting nothing but malevolence. "Mommy, I've made a new friend," he said with a grin, stretching too wide for a child, his voice dripping with an unholy delight. Frozen in shock, Sarah did not see the darkness swirl around him, culminating in a figure behind him, tall, twisted, eyes gleaming with ancient hunger. Her thoughts spun wildly. Who was he really? And what had he become? The ache of dread returned tenfold, scorching her lungs. As the shadows beckoned forward, she couldn't tell if it was her mind unraveling or the very essence of her son being consumed. The air thickened, crushing her instincts. The realization hit her like a freight train. She needed to escape. But the darkness pressed on, the walls of her home spilling secrets she was not ready to bear. In that instant, Sarah knew she had to choose, fight for her son or flee from this nightmare. But as she hesitated, the laughter returned, twisted and ragged, curling around her. "Which side will you choose, Sarah?" it taunted, and just like that, the basement descended further into chaos. Would she dare confront the dark truth? Or would she be lost, swallowed by a darkness that claimed everything she loved? As the entity loomed closer, blocking her escape, Sarah's mind raced in terror. Would she risk it all to save Jake, or would the darkness claim them both? The question echoed as the shadows enveloped them. What is a mother willing to sacrifice, to save her child? The laughter twisted through the room, almost tangible, wrapping around Sarah with a suffocating embrace. She stumbled back, her breath hitching in her throat. The shadow behind Jake loomed closer, its form indistinct but undeniably menacing, like an ink blot spreading across a page of her life. "Mommy," Jake's voice, now a discordant echo of innocence, reached for her like a tether. Stay and play, and not twisted in her stomach. Yet, she couldn't take her eyes off him, couldn't convince herself that the child standing before her was not just altered but still her Jake, somehow entangled with this darkness. The shadows pulsed as if they sensed her wavering resolve, growing thicker, suffocating the small glimmer of hope in her heart. "Mom!" It was her voice breaking through the chaos, desperation clawing at her vocal cords. "Please, Jake, if you're in there, come back to me. Mommy, don't you like my friend?" His eyes glinted in the faint light, void of any warmth, like black mirrors reflecting back dread. The shadow behind him growled softly, as if it took pride in her pain, feeding off her fear. the basement walls trembled, and Sarah felt a wave of regret, sharp like glass, ripping through the love she had for her son. It surged, leaving a bitter taste at the back of her throat, the realization that she couldn't trust what had become of Jake. She was trapped in a horror she never imagined, her survival instincts kicked in. She needed to escape. "I can't stay, Jake. I need to find you, I need to help you." Suddenly, the room grew colder, the air thickening with a sudden chill that wrapped around her like chains. The shadow shuddered, twisting, as if angered by her refusal. "Leave." It hissed, the voice a sinister rasp that echoed against the damp walls. "You won't leave until we play." As if solidifying its claim, the shadow stretched out, snaking itself toward her like a living entity. Panic ignited within Sarah. She turned on her heel and ran, her heart pounding like a war drum, each frantic step making the steps beneath her feel unstable. Stumbling, she nearly lost her balance. Sarah grasped the walls, rough wood scraping against her skin as she ran, desperately seeking a way out. She turned into a narrow space between old crates and discarded furniture, her breath coming in desperate gasps. "Mommy! Don't go!" Jake's voice cut through the darkness, mingling with the laughter that echoed all around her, growing louder, more frenzied. Panic surged as Sarah moved deeper into the clutter, eyes darting between the shadows and light, frantic to find a passage. The air felt charged with whispers and secrets, wrapping around her, taunting her resolve. Jake's voice faded, replaced by a cacophony of laughter, reminiscent of children at play, but this was different, cruel. The laughter screamed with malice, clawing at her sanity. She stopped short, forcing herself to listen, to discern truths from lies. Where was he? The gravity of that question hung heavy in her heart. Was he lost, or something worse, a shade tainted by darkness? Suddenly, a flash of light flickered at the corner of her vision. It was a door, half open, revealing the faintest outline of a staircase spiraling upwards. How had she missed it? Hope surged. But as she moved toward it, a sharp coldness stung her skin and the laughter flattened into dark whispers. "You can't leave us," Sarah faltered, breath quickening, mind scrambling. She felt the weight of the shadows pressing down on her. What if this was a trap? What if Jake wasn't in the basement anymore, but elsewhere, somewhere far more sinister? She pressed forward, determination fueling her as she reached for the doorframe. Each heartbeat reverberated as a countdown, carrying her closer to a dangerous choice. In that moment, the laughter shifted, shifting into a chorus of mockery, 1,000 voices merging into one. The power of fear lent life to the shadow, which surged forward. "Join us, Sarah, or lose everything." With a final sprint fueled by terror and sheer instinct, she wrenched the door open, plunging into the unknown. But just as she stepped through, the door slammed shut behind her with a bone-chilling thud. No escaping this nightmare, no turning back. As she caught her breath, the question echoed in her mind: had she just sealed her fate, or was this the key to reclaiming Jake? Each moment felt like a precipice, as she wondered what horror awaited her on the other side of that door. The air on the other side of the door was thick and heavy, suffocating. It smelled damp, like old earth, and the faint stench of decay lingered, gnawing at her senses. Sarah's heart raced, each beat a desperate plea for survival. She hesitated, grappling with a sinking feeling: was this another trap? Her pulse hammered in her ears as she turned, pressing her back against the closed door. The laughter had faded, but the weight of the shadowy threat felt closer, a looming peril just waiting to strike. "Jake!" she called out, voice shaking, cutting through the tense silence. "I'm here. I'm not leaving you." The darkness stretched around her, ethereal tendrils curling like fingers, eager to play. Though there were no concrete figures in sight, Sarah sensed an audience lurking just beyond her ability to see. "Play!" The whispers returned, this time more pronounced, swirling around her like a storm. "Play with us!" Fear clawed at her throat. The soil was damp beneath her feet, and in the dim light, she caught a glimpse of something glimmering: fragments of broken toys strewn across the floor. The remnants of childhood laughter now twisted into something grotesque. A doll shattered into pieces, its glassy eyes gaping, seemed to watch her with an unsettling gaze. Mommy Jake's voice emerged from the shadows, small and weak, a faint flicker of the boy she once knew. "Help me!" Despair flooded her heart. "Where are you?" She moved forward, each step a tremor of hope and dread. "Jake! Help me please!" It was almost imperceptible, but she felt something shift in the air. The walls around her pulsed, each heartbeat resonating through the cramped space. It felt as if they were breathing, alive with the remnants of countless souls trapped where they didn't belong. "Join us!" echoed the chorus of voices, now a sinister chant, taunting, pleading. The words melded together, creating an unnerving rhythm that pounded against her skull. "Mommy!" Jake's call sliced through the drone. She spun toward the sound, her heart in her throat, bowled over by the yearning in that single word. It was a plea, an invocation of hope amidst overwhelming despair. "Jake! I'm coming!" She pushed deeper into the shadows, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The darkness got thicker, wrapping around her wrists. No, not now. Not when she was so close. But the force was tenacious, tugging at her limbs, as if 1,000 hands were reaching out to pull her back. Shadows darted around her, laughing, their joy deceptive. The toys, broken and twisted, sang a macabre lullaby, pulling her every bit closer to the brink. Mommy Jake's voice rose again, this time layered with an echo of fear, sharp enough to pierce her resolve. "Help us!" She froze. "Us?" The shadows fused and elongated, revealing distortion in the air. A nightmarish apparition materialized before her, a twisting figure made of darkness. It grinned, its mouth stretching impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth, a gaping void that threatened to swallow her whole. "Join us, Sarah! You can't help them without helping us." The ground rippled beneath her, an invitation laced with malice. She could feel the pull now, a deeper connection to the darkness surrounding her, whispering promises of power and permanence. All she had to do was give in. Desperation clawed at her chest, fighting against the allure. "No. I won't betray him." With each defiant word, the shadows writhed and hissed, angry at her rejection. The laughter rose again, shrill and mocking, echoing all around, no longer mere echoes of children at play, but of countless souls lost to despair. Jake's voice flared anew, breaking through the laughter with a sound more frantic. "Mommy! You have to choose. Choose." As Sarah's world spun, the darkness closed in. Each step backward deepened a chasm of uncertainty. The figure before her leaned in, grotesque features blurring into the shadows, taunting her. But time was slipping away. The choice hung heavy in the silence. Who would she save? Swallowing hard, Sarah clenched her fists. The choice was hers, one that could either shatter her completely or guide her back to her son. But as she took a breath to speak, the shadows surged forward, coiling around her once again with one final desperate plea. "Join us, Sarah!" The darkness roared in response. Would she succumb, or fight to reclaim the love she held dear? The scream that ripped through her throat echoed louder than the laughter that surrounded her, resounding into the endless void of despair. Into the unknown, with belief teetering on the brink, did she still possess the strength to hold on? There in the chaos, a flicker of light sparked, leaving her crashing into a harrowing question: could she truly break the cycle, or would the shadows claim them all? The shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of dark intent. Sarah felt them wrap around her legs, cold and clammy as if the earth itself was reaching up to claim her. She fought, twisting and pulling against the suffocating grip, but it tightened like a noose, dragging her down into the soil that crunched beneath her feet. "Jake!" She screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the cacophony encircling her, the chorus of lost souls rising to a fever pitch. Panic flooded her veins, her heart racing erratically as she struggled against the darkness. "Help us, Mommy!" Jake's voice echoed, now layered with more urgency, more desperation, an unbreakable thread pulling her toward him. But the shadows laughed, a chilling sound that echoed off the unseen walls surrounding her. "You can't save him," they taunted, a grim mirth filling the air. "Join us, and you shall be free." She shook her head, anger igniting within her. "I'm not afraid of you." But the fear clawed at her, whispering doubts that clouded her mind, unsettling every resolve she tried to muster. "Jake! Where are you?" Her heart was thrumming a frantic beat in her chest, each pulse resonating with an urgency that threatened to crush her. The laughter ebbed, replaced by a sudden silence, and in that unsettling quiet, she could hear something, a faint, echoing sob. "Mommy, I'm scared." There it was again. The desperate plea that pierced through her, an innocent voice that anchored her resolve. She surged forward, pushing past the chaos tugging at her like a tempest. The shadows recoiled slightly, momentarily distracted as she lunged, propelled by sheer determination and maternal instinct. As she stumbled, her hands brushed against the remnants of forgotten toys. A rusted tricycle, its wheels coated in grime, sent chills coursing through her. In the dim light, she could see glimpses of faces, eyes wide with terror, mouths contorted in silent screams trapped within the objects that once held joy. And then she felt it. A thin thread of hope, a tiny wisp of light dancing in the distance, tugging at her soul. "Jake! I'm coming!" It was an invocation that flared, igniting the darkness around her, casting eerie shadows that flickered like fireflies. Bewildered, she stumbled toward the light, her feet moving of their own accord. The shadows hissed, their anger palpable, crescendoing into furious shrieks that lingered in the air like static. "You will regret this choice," they screamed, their voices a haunting symphony of malice. "Maybe I will," she screamed back, but there was no time for doubt. The whisperings of the damned clawed at her ears, but now her heart was guided by the glow of hope, a beacon she refused to ignore. "Mommy!" Jake's voice strained from beyond the veil, breaking through with a clarity that cut through the darkness. "Please hurry." She pressed forward, the warmth of the emerging light embracing her like a long-lost friend. But the moment was fleeting. The shadows lunged, tightening their grip once more with a ferocious strength that threatened to pull her back into the depths. "No." She stumbled but kept her eyes on the light, holding on to its promise fiercely. With one last desperate push, she clawed her way forward, willing the shadows to release their grip, feeling their icy fingers slip away as she drew closer. With a sudden rush, she lunged into the light. But it didn't feel like freedom. It consumed her, wrapping around her like a cocoon, leaving her suspended between the worlds. "Mommy? Where are you?" The voice trembled, now weaving between the light and the dark, and Sarah felt a surge of panic wash over her. What had she walked into? Was this the path to her son, or an even more sinister trap? "Jake, hold on!" she shouted, but there were no guarantees. The air grew heavy, and shadows began to swirl around her once more, whispers mingling with echoes of laughter. The realization hit hard. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As darkness seeped back into her reality, more potent than before, Sarah knew. She had traded one fate for another. What cruel game awaited? And as she looked for a way out, the shadows loomed ominously, whispering a sentence that felt like a knife piercing through her heart. "You thought you could save him? It's only just begun." In terror, she braced for whatever horror awaited in this chilling new maze. Would she find her son? Or would they both be lost forever? The light didn't illuminate, it swallowed her whole. Sarah felt herself suspended in darkness, the weight of despair pressing down like a leaden blanket. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her, a chorus of lost souls stretching on eternally. Each flicker of hope dimmed, as if the light itself was drawing it into the abyss, but then came a glimmer, a shimmer that caught her attention. A figure emerged from the haze, blurry and distorted. She squinted, trying to make it out, but the shadows shifted, twisting the form into a grotesque parody of what once might have been. "Jake?" she called, desperation clawing at her throat, fighting her fear. The figure hesitated, then melted back into the darkness, laughter echoing, an unsettling blend of childlike glee and something more sinister. "Mommy, help us," a voice pleaded, but it wasn't Jake's. The tone sent icy fingers creeping down her spine. It sounded like a child, but hollow, echoing from deep within the shadows. The memory of her son sparked a flame of anger in her chest. "Get away from him!" She shouted into the dark, the light flickering in response to her fury. The shadows seemed to pause, bemused by her resistance. "What will you give in return?" they whispered, a chilling invitation laced with mockery. "What are you willing to sacrifice to find your son?" Thoughts raced through her mind: how to escape, how to save Jake. "I'll do anything," she screamed, feeling heat pooling in her palms, a flickering energy surging to life. "Just tell me where he is." The shadows twirled in a frenzied dance, undulating with gleeful malice. "You will uncover truths best left buried, dear mother," they hissed, voices twisting into shapes that were almost familiar. "And should you venture too far, you may not return." The laughter merged with a heartbeat slower, steady, echoing around her. It synced with her pounding heart, filling the air with dread. The ground beneath her feet rippled, trembling like water as if the very foundation of her existence was shaking apart. "Jake!" she cried again, this time fueled by a fierce determination she wouldn't let slip. "I'm coming. I promise." In response, the heartbeat quickened, morphing into a chaotic rhythm that sent her mind spiraling. "Follow the sound," a voice echoed, distorted and layered. It haunted her, the hint of familiarity playing tricks on her senses. She focused, honing in on that pulse, leaning into the echoes of her son's voice. Each thud reverberated through her, stronger, sending adrenaline coursing through her veins. The shadows coiled around her, desperate to maintain their grip, but she pushed back against their weight, growing more defiant. With every step, she felt the strength of the shadows waning, but the darkness closed in, trying to snuff out the light she cultivated from within. Each breath she took tasted of iron and ash. It felt like a vicious battle against unseen forces hell-bent on consuming her. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a narrow gap in the gloom, a fissure glowing faintly like a dying ember. She could see the outline of a path snaking ahead, leading deeper into the unknown. And within that glow, she thought she glimpsed Jake's silhouette, small and fragile against the encompassing dark. "Hold on!" she yelled, launching herself toward the chink of light, heart pounding a rallying cry as she fought to reach him. But the shadows wailed in fury, shrieking in protest as they clawed at her, determined to drag her back into their suffocating embrace. Just as her fingers grazed the edge of that shimmering rift, an overwhelming chill coursed through her. It paralyzed her, seizing her breath, leaving her gasping in the last moments of the warm security. The voice, once jubilant, turned dire. "You sought to save him, but at what cost?" And in that instant, the ground trembled violently beneath her, the fissure widening, darkness spilling forth like a tide. All at once, Sarah realized the terrible truth facing the shadows might just reveal more than she was ready for. As the light flickered and faded, she was pulled further into the unknown, the last vestiges of her hope slipping away. What awaited her beyond the light? Would Jake be there or something else altogether? The darkness enveloped her, a heavy curtain with no end in sight. Sarah stumbled forward, her breath quickening, driven by a primal fear mixed with a fierce determination. She wasn't just chasing a child, she was racing against time itself. The shadows writhed around her, eager to reclaim her, their whispers now a discordant symphony echoing her name, taunting her with the truth she feared. "Follow the heartbeat," the voice had commanded. It was strong now, pulsating through the silken veil of darkness that pressed in on her. She could almost feel the rhythm in her bones, guiding her down a path she could scarcely see. "Jake!" she shouted, the name tearing from her throat. It fell into the silence with no response, just the sinister laughter of the shadows surrounding her. Her heart raced, thumping hard against her chest, each beat a reminder of what was at stake. The very air thickened with dread, tightening around her like a noose. She pressed on, her hands brushing against cold, damp walls, the texture rugged yet slick with something unnameable. Suddenly, she rounded a corner and stopped short. The sight before her stole the breath from her lungs. A chamber opened wide, illuminated by an otherworldly glow that seemed to rise from the very ground. And there, in the center, lay a circle of flickering shadows, twisting and writhing like a disturbed nest of serpents. Each shadow formed a grotesque shape, flickering in and out of existence, as if they were not just lights but remnants of what had been. In the middle of the circle sat an old, decrepit doll, a figure lost in time, dressed in ragged remnants of faded fabric. Its eyes, made of cracked glass, stared unblinkingly at her. And next to it, another shape, one she could feel with every fiber of her being. It was the outline of a child, small and vulnerable, slumped against the ground. "Jake!" she gasped, racing toward him. But just as she reached the threshold of the circle, a force like a vice clamped down on her shoulders. Ice flooded through her veins, pinning her against the ground. A cacophony of whispers rose, rising like a storm, clamoring for her retreat. "You must turn back!" they shrieked, every voice overlapping, the sound shaking her to her core. "You don't know what you're doing." But the love for her son burned too bright. "Let him go!" she screamed, wrestling against the grip that bound her. "Let me save him!" The shadows recoiled slightly, momentarily stunned by her fierceness. Then, laughter bubbled up again, dark and unrelenting. "Do you truly wish to save him?" the voice asked, dripping with malice. "What have you sacrificed already? Did you think it would be free?" With a surge of defiance, Sarah reminded herself that she would face any cost to save Jake. The glow surrounding the circle pulsed, rekindling the hope she nearly lost. Yet, it flickered uncertainly as the shadows swarmed closer, pressing upon her, each whisper reinforcing her terror. "Do you wish to know the truth?" they hissed, circling her like vultures, coaxing her with knowledge buried long ago. "Do you?" She hesitated, wavering between the need for truth and fear of its consequences. But then the silhouette of her son, so frail against the swirling darkness, pulled her resolve tighter. "Yes. I want to know." She shouted into the void, her voice laden with desperation. At her declaration, the whispers shifted, taking on a more sinister tone. The darkness rippled violently, expanding and contracting as if it were alive. Shadows grasped at her ankles, pulling her ever closer to the edge of the circle. "Then step forward, dear mother," they beckoned, "and see the secrets that lie beneath." Gathering all her strength, Sarah took a step into the circle, feeling the chill seep into her bones. With every ounce of willpower, she pressed on, crosshairs locked on Jake. But as she advanced, strange images flickered across her vision, memories not just of Jake, but of shadows past, fears deep-rooted, horrifying truths that churned within her. The air grew thick, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she neared the doll. "Jake, I'm here!" she cried, but the shadows rushed forward, pulling her into a darkness more profound than she had ever known. What heinous truth lay in wait? What would she discover in her pursuit of Jake? Could salvation turn into a nightmare? In that moment, Sarah felt a flicker of despair, whispering her fate. The moment Sarah stepped into the circle, the world warped around her. The flickering shadows surged forward, an insatiable tide of terror that twisted in and out of her vision like a brutal memory clawing its way back. She gasped, stumbling as if the ground beneath her was alive with malice, heaving with a heartbeat that echoed in her ears louder than her own. "Jake!" The name tore itself from her throat, but the shadows swallowed it, leaving only empty silence and the oppressive crackle of fear. Before her, the old doll remained motionless, its cracked eyes reflecting not just the light but something else, something sinister. She looked closer. The doll's mouth moved, a slow, grotesque grin forming, not from happiness but from a darkness that felt mocking, filthy. "You wanted to know." An icy sweat formed on her brow. "What do you mean?" she gasped, as the shadows swirled, blocking her view of Jake. A chill crawled up her spine, chilling her to the bone. "Your sacrifice," the voice whispered, articulated from the depths of the doll's throat. "Every time you've said no, every time you've turned away, no." She interrupted, heart racing. "That can't be." I would never. But another wave of pain closed in on her, memories flooding back like daggers. The times she ignored Jake's nightmares, brushed aside his fears, put her own needs first. The suffocating guilt wrapped around her like a thorny vine, digging in deep. Each prick reminded her how she failed to see. How did she not know? The shadows crept closer, tightening their grip as visions flashed around her, glimpses of Jake in moments of pure vulnerability, the darkness that seeped into his innocent laughter, the whispers in the night that left him trembling. She was losing him, piece by tortured piece. Look! The doll commanded, its voice now echoing with weight. The shadows peeled back, creating a distorted pathway that led to Jake, still slumped, small against the sprawling darkness. As Sarah took another step, a sharp pain pierced her foot, that hollow grip of unseen hands clutching at her legs, pulling her toward the bottomless void. The air thickened, forcing her to breathe in ice. "Jake! I'm coming!" she cried, though her voice felt like a whisper lost in a storm. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but another surge of maternal love flooded through her veins. Fueled by desperation, she lunged forward, determined despite the grave weight pressing down like lead. The room blurred, shadows flickering like fireflies, contorting into stark shapes that bore witness to untold pain. In her mind's eye, she saw herself holding Jake so tightly once, a moment of connection she'd almost forgotten, the pure love sparking as bright as the sun. But dark memories loomed, the harsh words, the dismissive glances, and now the chilling realization. The shadows were more than mere phantoms, they were reflections of her choices. "What have you done?" they whispered, mingling with the echoes of her own self-recrimination. "Enough!" she screamed, summoning every ounce of will. The shadows trembled, taken aback, as she pressed on, inching toward Jake's fragile figure. Just as she reached for him, the ground erupted with a cacophony of shrieks and laughter, a maelstrom of darkness, swirling around her, threatening to suffocate her hope. "Stop!" she shouted, feeling the darkness claw at her, a grip tightening like a noose. But something within flickered. Hope, the flickering glow she thought extinguished, rose up in her chest. With determination forged in desperation, she reached for Jake, feeling the warmth radiating where his body lay slumped, and the shadows surged forward anew, intent on dragging her away from him. But in that moment of contact, she saw it, the connection, a tether woven tight through love and sacrifice. Would they overpower her, or could she sever the shadows' hold? "Jake!" she called one last time, sheer instinct taking control. "We will fight." As she clutched him tightly in her arms, the air thickened with unknowns, and the ominous echo of laughter teased her, layered with aspects of darkness she could still not grasp. What power lay dormant within that darkness? What would it cost her to release Jake from their grasp? The shadows shifted, their shadows looming larger as they whispered promises of truth yet undisclosed. In that moment of raw connection, Sarah felt the tide of despair recede. She held Jake close, feeling the warmth of his small frame against her chest, the beating of his heart sinking with her own desperate hope. A sudden resolve ignited within her, fierce and unyielding. These shadowy creatures had fed off fear and doubt for too long. She would not let them win. "Jake, listen to me," she urged, her voice echoing in the oppressive darkness. "We have to fight together. We can break free from this." The shadows writhed around her, enraged. "You cannot simply choose to love him away," they jeered, voices layered in a haunting choir. "You have to pay the price, a price that will tear your heart asunder." But Sarah was done listening to their taunts. Focusing on the love radiating from her son, she closed her eyes, envisioning the light they could share, a beacon strong enough to silence the darkness. The air trembled with an energy unseen, vibrating with every heartbeat. "Tell me what you want," she shouted, clenching Jake tighter. "I will do anything for him. I will give you my fears, my regrets, just let him go." The shadows recoiled for an instant, their growls dropping to murmurs. "Anything?" they hissed, feverish interest flaring in their voices. "What are you willing to offer?" She swallowed hard, confidence draining but determination surging. "I'm willing to face my truths," she declared. "I'll confront the pain, the hurt I've hidden, to reclaim him." With that vow, the shadows surged forward, coiling around her like a storm. They were enveloping her in a symphony of dark memories, moments of weakness and sorrow influenced by fear and regret. Each memory stung, but she stood strong. Suddenly, something cracked within the gloom, an echo of laughter, sweet yet sorrowful. "Mommy, I'm here." Jake's voice rang out, clear and true, cutting through the suffocating haze. It fueled Sarah's heart with strength. "Let us go, sweet boy," she whispered fiercely, knowing they could face whatever came together. The shadows hissed, furious but undeniably shaken. They thrummed with a sudden unrest, swirling erratically around them, threatening to pull her back. As she tightened her grip around her son, an explosion of warmth radiated inward. Light swelled from the depths of her heart, swirling outwards, illuminating the darkness. It washed over both her and Jake, forcing the shadows back, illuminating their pained faces in a dreadful glow. "No!" they shrieked, their ghastly forms distorted and breaking apart in the light's embrace. Voices wavered as the remnants of her fears trembled against the newfound strength. Sarah could feel victory rising within her as she steadied her breathing. "Come on, Jake. We are breaking free," she shouted, charging towards the dim outline of a door appearing in the distance. With urgency, they raced toward the glowing threshold, feeling the shadows lose their grip, screaming in impotent fury behind them. As they drew closer, she could see the door's golden glow, emanating warmth and solace unlike anything she'd ever known. "This is our way out," she urged, pushing through the last remnants of encroaching darkness. Every step forward felt heavy and free. All at once, the door burst open as they flung themselves through, the light engulfing them. The sinister whispers faded into an echoing nothingness, and when Sarah dared to glance behind one last time, she saw the infinite darkness retreat, swallowed by the light they brought with them. The world on the other side was washed in golden sunlight. They found themselves back in their living room, the warm afternoon glow spilling through the windows. It felt rich with life, familiar and safe. She breathed deep, the tension melting away, replaced by the sweet scent of home. "Mommy!" Jake exclaimed, throwing his arms around her. Relief flooded through Sarah, the warmth of her son's embrace banishing the shadows once and for all. "I was so scared." "I know, sweet boy. I know." Tears streamed down her face, a release of months' worth of fear, loss, and near defeat. All the shadows that once threatened to tear them apart dissipated like ashes in the wind. As they settled in, the laughter she heard before returned, playful and joyous, echoing through every room. They were free, together. And finally, she understood. Love was the power that shattered darkness, the antidote that burned through fear. Home, once again. The shadows would no longer haunt them. She had fought fiercely, faced unimaginable truths, and reclaimed her son at the cost of her sacrifice. And as they embraced tightly, Sarah whispered a promise into Jake's hair, something she'd hold on to forever. "No matter what happens, we will always choose each other." This was not just the end, but a new beginning, one illuminated by the light of love. As Sarah and Jake basked in their reunion, they both knew one thing for certain: they would never again let fear hold its sway. This is where we leave Sarah and Jake safe and reunited, weaving their lives back together while embracing the lessons learned in the face darkness. But remember, every story has consequences. Now, before you go, I need you to do something critical. Don't miss out on what's next. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to help the algorithm find others who need these tales. And I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And for goodness sake, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. Thank you for being part of this wild ride.